Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Something different for this holiday season on the pod as I head into my 8th year of the Voice of Retail and prepare for the year ahead. A guest host crossover thought leadership insight bonus series of episodes from my award-winning Remarkable Retail podcast. This past summer, Steve Dennis and I released a series of 6 bonus episodes with leadership insights adapted from his newest bestseller, Leaders Leap. In the next 6 bonus episodes, Steve will unpack themes from his Leaders Leap and place them squarely and provocatively in the current retail context. Steve will be talking about how playing it safe is often the riskiest choice of all, what shifts are most important to focus on right now, and how we are often our worst enemies, and much more. Each highly digestible episode will highlight the key questions you need to answer for your organization to take the bold action necessary to transform at the speed of disruption. So follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts today, and brace yourself for a steady stream of wisdom, thought-provoking questions, and water cooler conversation. Remarkable Retail returns with Season 10 starting in January.
Perhaps you know the great Irish writer Samuel Beckett's arguably most famous quotation. Ever tried, ever failed. No matter, try again, fail again, fail better. Of course, he didn't say this in the context of how to accelerate transformation, retail or otherwise. But if you've been following this short special series, or if you just think about what distinguishes organizations that are winning the future from the also-rans, it is very often the case that they act more boldly, they take more chances, they fail regularly, they adjust, they fail some more. They believe, as my friend Seth Godin says, if failure is not an option, then neither is success. Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is not to avoid failure, it is to fail better. But what does this mean? Why is it so important? And how do we do it exactly? Moreover, why must we not only see failure as an inevitable part of our transformation journey, but how do we adopt a far, far greater sense of urgency?
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
That's our topic on our 6th and final episode of our special summer series.
Welcome to a special Remarkable Retail podcast summer series focused on what leaders need to do to help their organizations win the future and leap to higher ground. I'm Michael LeBlanc, and in this 6-part limited series, Steve will be unpacking key lessons from his new best-selling book, Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, available everywhere books are sold.
Over the years, whether it's part of a keynote I'm delivering or in a smaller workshop setting with a senior management team, I'll often start things off by posing a question to the group. Usually it's something like this. When you think about your organization's culture, would you say it is fundamentally wired to say yes or wired to say no? Usually this elicits some nervous shifting of the participants in their seats, or maybe a break in any eye contact with me. Perhaps you're feeling a little uncomfortable thinking about your own answer to this question. This uneasiness stems from this. Everyone knows the answer should be, oh, we're very much wired to say yes. So glad you asked. But of course, most often the truthful answer is something along the lines of, oh, we don't like to brag, but we recently won the Nobel Prize for defending the status quo. In other words, the culture is very much wired to say no. Which means not only is failure not an option, but it's also probably not even talked about much. That's a huge problem if you need to transform at the speed of disruption. Deep down, we know that consistently winning teams are almost always on offense. They take more risk, they try more stuff, they fail often, they recalibrate, and they try again. Having spent nearly half my retail career working in senior leadership positions at 2 large retailers that were very much wired to say no, that were pretty much on defense all the time, I have a lot of experience fighting the status quo and trying to advance the idea, as we talked about in last week's episode, that safe is risky. But even if we change our attitude towards risk, we're going to need more than a tweak to our mindset to meaningfully accelerate innovation and create and commercialize products and services that are truly remarkable and that provide sustainable profitability. Failing better requires acceptance of a few new realities, and it means adoption of some meaningfully different processes and practices. Let's dig into this. I start off Chapter 9 of Leader's Leap with a quotation from Carlos Castaneda's book, Journey to Ixtlan, where he writes, "The problem is, you think you have time." The world is moving faster and faster, and if we don't,
Go, go, go!
we might well get left behind. Consider this. It took Uber 70 months to get to 100 million users. It took Twitter 65 months. Spotify took 55 months to get to 100 million users. Instagram got there in 30 months. That's 2.5 years. TikTok only took 9 months to get to 100 million users. ChatGPT only needed 2 months. And Threads got there in under a week. The fact is, change is inevitable. And in this era of unrelenting, accelerating disruption, speed is essential. Futurist Anders Sorman Nielsen provides an important reminder. The rate of change has never been this fast, and it will never be this slow again. Whether our challenge is our need to close any transformation gap that's developed, or we have a desire to leap ahead of the competition, first and foremost, failing better means getting started. In most corners of the retail world, we must accept the fierce urgency of now, because more and more, he who hesitates is toast. A regular feature of my keynotes, workshops, and executive coaching sessions is my sharing the Chinese proverb, "The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now." Or if you fancy something more current, how about this quotation from actor Hugh Laurie? "It's a terrible thing, I think, in life to wait until you're ready. I have this feeling now that actually no one is ever ready to do anything. There is almost no such thing as ready. There is only now. And you may as well do it now. Generally speaking, now is as good a time as any." Or maybe Elvis is more your cup of tea.
Hey, a little less conversation, a little more action, please. All this aggravation.
The second key to failing better is to embrace imperfection. I've written and spoken a lot about the Japanese aesthetic concept of wabi-sabi, which values the beauty of impermanence, imperfection, and the incomplete. When it comes to innovation, the value of putting a work in progress into the world is that we get real live feedback and we get it faster. As we discussed in an earlier episode, some insight is only revealed through action. Prototypes, minimally viable products, operating pilots, and the like are accelerants, not compromises or speed bumps. A related aspect to this is to be very clear that what you put out into the world not only might not work, if you're not shipping it until you're pretty certain it will work, then you are likely not pushing to the edges enough or are stuck in a cycle of perfectionism. While coarse, I like the idea of what Ernest Hemingway referred to as shitty first drafts. If we are to accelerate transformation, we must see that our perfectionism is one of the dragons we must slay, to call back to last week's episode on why safe is risky. I also love what Anne Lamott says about this. Perfectionism is the voice of the oppressor, the enemy of the people. It will keep you cramped and insane your whole life, and it is the main obstacle between you and a shitty first draft. The third important way to fail better is to try more stuff. Many people seem to think that companies that produce a steady stream of innovation, that continue to adapt and transform for a new era, have found some magic and reliable innovation formula. To be sure, there are any number of necessary conditions to improve your odds of success. But a distinguishing feature of companies that fail better, and produce an impressive series of innovations is they get a lot of reps in. In my first book, Remarkable Retail: How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption, I had a subchapter titled Unleash the Demos, which evolved from a 2015 blog post of mine. In it, I told the story of hearing a very early version of Billy Joel's classic Piano Man. While you could hear the connection to the final version that became a massive hit, there were a lot of things in the demo tape that were quite different. The number of verses, the lyrics, the bridge, the tempo, key changes, etc. Of course, producing demos or working out a new song in the studio is common for musicians. Pencil sketches are something most painters do as a regular practice. But many companies are hesitant to create and rapidly cycle through a portfolio of experiments. A fourth key to failing better is ABT, always be testing. It's one thing to start before you're ready, to embrace imperfection, and to be willing to try more stuff. It is quite another to actually create an ongoing powerful culture of experimentation and the processes to nurture it. If you aren't consistently and regularly testing a bunch of stuff, it is very unlikely that you will move the dial on innovation much, if at all. And by testing, I mean having well-defined objectives, ways to measure success or failure, and being sure you are ready to fuel a rollout or scale up when things go well. The fifth ingredient to failing better is to shrink the change, a concept Chip and Dan Heath have advanced in their excellent book, Switch: How to Change Things When Change is Hard. Too often, we feel like we need to see our way clearly to the full solution rather than point our compass in a promising direction and take things in more bite-sized pieces. Trying to make sense of where competition, our customers, and technology is headed, not to mention understanding the potential implications of shifts in the broader macroeconomic and geopolitical environment, can be overwhelming. Shrinking the change provides a framework for moving ahead in the face of uncertainty. Now, Ted Lasso fans might make the connection between shrink the change and taking things bird by bird, which is referenced in 2 episodes of the fantastic series.
Hey, Coach, bird by bird.
It's a somewhat obscure reference, except to many writers, to the aforementioned Anne Lamott and her book Bird by Bird: Instructions on Writing and Life. The title comes from advice her father gave her brother, who was struggling with writing a school report about birds. He was overwhelmed by the task. Her father's advice on how to approach it? Bird by bird, buddy. Shrinking the change, taking a bird-by-bird approach to experimentation, allows us to get started and better manage what can be a risky journey. The final piece of advice in how to fail better is knowing when to stop or retool, to kill our darlings, as William Faulkner somewhat awkwardly phrased it. I worked for a company some years ago where they had been piloting a retail concept for several years. Nobody was particularly happy with the performance to date. Nobody was advocating for expanding beyond the 5 existing locations either. Nor was anyone pushing to shut it down or do any meaningful retooling. It was just languishing, consuming attention and resources. If we're going to fail better, we need to see that, despite our hustle-porn culture, quitting is underrated, and opportunity costs are real and must not be ignored. Failing better means not continuing to prop up and drag around experiments, pilots, or proof of concepts that have weak results or were poorly designed from the beginning, like some Weekend at Bernie's sequel. As you can hopefully see, failing better is partially an attitude that of course failure is an option. And it is about rewiring our organizations to step on the gas rather than ride the brake. But it is also very much a function of mass and velocity. We must try enough things to give ourselves a reasonable chance of achieving necessary yield. We must regularly be flexing the muscles of innovation and getting our reps in. Failing better means reducing the drag, eliminating the speed bumps that slow down progress on our innovation efforts. Failing better means being willing to try again, fail again, and keep going. Saturday Night Live creator and longtime producer Lorne Michaels famously said, "The show doesn't go on because it's ready. It goes on because it's 11:30. It sure would be nice if we had more time. But do we need more time, or do we need more courage? Are we likely to become the remarkable signal amid all the noise, the must-have brand among those swimming in a sea of sameness, by doing the same old thing, but just a little bit better? Can we possibly win the future by taking a series of small, overly cautious steps, or do we need to leap?" In the final chapter of my latest book, I include an excerpt from Natalie Nixon's brilliant book, The Creativity Leap, where she asks, "What is a leap?" She writes, "First, there is vision. You must have your eyes on the prize somewhere off in the distance. Second, you have to leap versus just walk or even run to that desired prize. Third, leaps often require a running start. Fourth, leaping requires that you suspend judgment after doing all the analysis, gauging, and estimating of what it takes to make the leap. Faith and intuition must take over. And fifth, leaping only moves you forward. It is impossible to leap backward. Leaping requires exorbitant amounts of energy and trust in the unknown, and it always propels us into new territory." Before we get into our final set of questions for you to consider in seeing ways to accelerate your transformation journey and fail better, some closing thoughts as we wrap up this special 6-part series. If you read Leaders Leap or listened to most of the last 6 episodes, perhaps it's occurred to you that both the book and this podcast series are experiments of sorts. I embrace both projects with the full knowledge that they might not work. In fact, I start out the final chapter of my new book by confessing the struggles I regularly face in my own work in general and in writing Leaders Leap in particular. Despite regularly dispensing lots of advice and pointing out the failings of others, I often find that I'm not very good at doing what I recommend, and a fair amount of my criticism is projection or merely distracting me from taking a hard look at myself. Consultant, heal thyself. But any form of meaningful, sustained transformation, whether we're talking about strategic, organizational, or personal, is hard work. Choosing to go into the belly of the beast and brave the wilderness, to mix metaphors, can be incredibly challenging and often rather scary. But it's very likely our only choice if we are going to do something remarkable. When I was having a hard time determining the right approach, finding my voice, or feeling like I had anything insightful to offer while working on Leaders Leap, not only did I feel lost, but I often heard the voice of Jeff Bridges from The Big Lebowski loud and clear.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
I was fortunate to have 2 people in particular who regularly helped talk me down from my various and sundry trips out to the anxiety ledge. One wisely said, "Embrace the suck," which is more helpful than you might think. The other gave me a notebook that simply read "Courageous" on the cover. Inside, she had handwritten a line from The Wizard of Oz, where the wizard says to the lion, "You have plenty of courage, I am sure. All you need is the confidence in yourself." I'll wrap up the main part of this episode with one more quotation that speaks to what it means to fail better, to go out on a limb, and to cultivate the courage and confidence to take the leaps we must. It's from David Bowie. If you feel safe in the area you're working in, you're not working in the right area. Always go a little further out into the water than you're capable of being in. Go a little bit out of your depth. And when you don't feel that your feet are quite touching the bottom, you're just about in the right place to do something exciting. As I've done in each of the episodes in this series, here are a few questions to help you and your team generate ideas to accelerate your transformation journey. Number 1, Is your organization fundamentally wired to say no or to say yes? 2. If it's mostly wired to say no, what are the underlying reasons for this, and how might they be eliminated? 3. What other barriers stand in the way of your failing better or are causing unhelpful friction in your innovation processes? 4. Has your company fully embraced a culture of experimentation? And if not, why not? And number 5, what could you stop doing that would lead to a meaningful acceleration in innovation progress? Thanks for joining us for our summer experiment. For more on how to accelerate your transformational journey, I hope you'll check out Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, which is available in hardcover, ebook, and Audible editions. Or, alternatively, have me come speak at your next event or strategy session. More information is available at stephenpdennis.com.
You've been listening to a special Summer Leaders Leap bonus edition of the Remarkable Retail Podcast, hosted by Steve Dennis and produced by me, Michael LeBlanc. Follow us wherever you enjoy your podcast, and don't forget to drop us that 5-star review. Safe travels, everyone.